Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Vonetta Kelly. I will be your mistress of ceremonies today. Welcome to the Anti-Racism and Diversity Conference. Our schedule today is going to be fluid. It's not going to be very strict. As you can tell by your watch, we're getting started a little late, but we would like to thank everyone who is here, who came out and braved the weather. I just have a statement from Mr. Dwayne Bradley, the general manager, because he cannot be here with us today. And it says, on behalf of the KPFT staff and volunteers, I would like to welcome you to this inaugural conference. Sadly, I am unable to be with you today to discuss the rich topic of diversity in terms of KPFT's past, present, and future. I know you will hear from many great voices of our community, voices who have utilized the people's airwaves of Pacifica Radio to effect positive change and growth in Houston and beyond the upper Texas Gulf Coast. These voices have come from all over the city and region, from all over the world, and have used the rich resource of KPFT to open windows through which they have both spoken to their community and allowed all of us to grow into knowledge of communities of which we may not be a part. It is through such exposure that our community has built and can continue to build bridges of understanding rather than walls of separation. It is how KPFT celebrates and fosters community. It is how KPFT fulfills its mission to create understanding between amongst peoples of all races, religions, ethnicities, and cultures. It is how we can one day perhaps manifest a culture of peace for real in our self, neighborhood, city, country, and planet. Thank you for your participation in manifesting this vision here today. Peace, Dwayne Bradley, General Manager. So also what we will be having is for our first panel will be from the past, and after the panel, we will have a breakout group with a facilitator who will collect information of ideas and recommendations for the radio station. If you hear anything, you have questions for the panel, you may address them and they can answer questions for you. First though, we will have some words from our facility host today, Mr. Claude Cummings, the District 6 Vice President of Communications Workers of America.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone.
Excuse me, sir, as an elder, could we have a moment of silence to acknowledge our spiritual background, whatever they are?
We certainly can, and I was even going to suggest that. I know that we have probably in the room here people of many religions of faith. So why don't we do this? Why don't we just have a moment of silent prayer? That way you can, whatever your religious belief is, you can exercise it in that way. All right?
Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much. And certainly, just as a brief mention, we're all saddened, I'm sure, by the passing of Muhammad Ali on last night. You know, such a great person, and I just remember vividly, my wife and I were together when he had his first fight with Joe Frazier after the Supreme Court overruled his, if he was allowed to get back into the ring and start fighting again, and how impressed I was that he could be off so long and still come back and fight like that. But even more so, I'm impressed at what he did as far as his charitable work. Had no idea until recently all of the money that he gave away to different organizations. So certainly we have lost a great person. But with that being said, certainly glad that all of you are here this morning. I'm so happy that KPFT has decided to put on this diversity conference. And I was asked some time ago, what is it, Claude, that excites you about KPFT? And the thing that excites me about it is the fact that as a matter of fact, Jesse and I were talking about a couple of minutes ago, is not run by a corporation. I'm a union leader, and I get tired of corporations just running everything. As a matter of fact, I'm so happy that CWA decided to take Verizon on about 6 weeks ago in that strike. And I will say to you that CWA was pouring out $10.5 million a week in strike benefits for those that were out on strike, because we have a strike fund. But I was just and that's right, we were able to do that. But we took them on because we are tired of corporations just running everything and running this country. So I'm glad that we have a radio station that is member supported, that will give us an opportunity to have our views the way we want them and not being controlled by anybody. That's right, clap for that. I'm particularly happy about Voices at Work, and that's how I first became familiar with KPFT. One of the things that I have said about the labor movement is that we don't do enough to blow our own horn. I mean, we don't do that. We don't take ownership in the fact that people can enjoy a 40-hour work week, and that we have rules against child labor, and we can take vacation time, that we have pensions, we have health care because of the unions. And so KPFT gives us an opportunity to tell that story to those who may not understand. It's a voice for the voiceless, basically, is what the station has done, and I'm certainly happy that I have been a part. I supported the station when I was the president of this union, and I have done it as the district vice president of District 6, and not only this station, but also KNON, which is the same type of station with Pacifica in Dallas. I believe that those of us who have the resources to get information out to progressive movements, we ought to do what we can to support them financially so they can get that word out, and people have an opportunity to talk without being fearful of what's going to happen by having a voice on a radio station like KPFT. So I think Ted was the person who decided to bring this conference together to talk about diversity. I know I'm on a panel, so I won't talk too much longer, but I thank all of you for being here on today in this weather the way it is. And I would say one more thing. Now, I'm a union leader, so I understand that this is a nonprofit station, but I can't help but just say a little bit before I take my seat about the political climate. And I won't talk about candidates, but I will talk about issues. And I think that we're in a time in our life where we need to quit looking so much at candidates and start looking at what people stand for, period. If they are people who stand for our issues, that's what we need to look at. We need to be issue-oriented and not person-oriented. And that's one of the reasons why I'm happy that KPFT is on the air, because it gives us an opportunity to talk issues from a perspective of people in the community. So thank you so much for giving me this time, and thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning. My name is Obidike Kamau. I am very happy to be here, and I want to thank CWA for hosting this. I want to, of course, thank Ted for pushing this, and this is something that Ted has pushed and talked about and come to and very persistently worked on for years. To talk about me and my connection to public radio and at some point community radio, I always listened to it. I listened to talk radio as a child in Corsicana, Texas, so I was listening to Dallas radio stations. It was always something I thought about doing. When I moved to Houston, and I'm a poet, a published poet, when I moved to Houston, I was talking with Ray Hill, who I think probably should have started this portion of this event. There was a woman named Patricia McCrae who did the poetry show. And I know if people have listened to KPFT for years, you might remember Pat McCrae. Pat heard me read at a library and invited me on her show. And I went on her show and introduced the book that I had written at that time was a book named New Nigga Poems. And I went on Pat's show, and I thought it was a good show. I was thrilled to be on the radio. And after the show was over, Pat took me to Ray Hill's office and introduced him to me, and they asked me about doing a show. So I came up with the concept for a show named Rap, Rhythm, and Rhyme. And it was just kind of amazing to me. This is something that I had always wanted to do, and you hear about the power of attraction. So apparently I attracted this opportunity, and I have been involved with KPFT ever since that time. So first of all, I just want to publicly thank Ray for bringing me on the show. We have a couple of shared characteristics. We both have a tendency to raise hell depending upon the situation. And we also like to get various voices involved in the conversation, or in the pluralogue, which is more accurate because dialogue says two. We have to think in terms of pluralogue because there are so many of us, so many different voices, so many agendas, so many people that have things that they want and they need. I, like Ray, always believe that there is a way to work those things out and that everybody can come away with something. I came on KPFT doing Rap, Rhythm, and Rhyme. I had no idea what I was doing. But Rap, Rhythm, and Rhyme morphed into Afrocentric reality, and I guess with Afrocentric reality, I kind of hit my stride. Dwayne Lork, whom I've met much later, told me that he actually listened to Afrocentric reality, and I've run into people that listen to Afrocentric reality and who seem to feel that my programming made a contribution to, maybe helped to put a signal out as opposed to the noise. I just want to say that there is no doubt in my mind how valuable KPFT is, not just to this community, but really to the world. And not only is KPFT valuable, but the philosophy which created KPFT and which has sustained it through all of this time is very valuable too. We live in a very contentious time, and human beings seem to be pretty contentious beings. We seem to be relatively selfish. We often seem to defer inherently to the power. The power is generally very insensitive to large swaths of the demographic, and so a voice like KPFT, the philosophy of giving everybody an opportunity to participate in this is something that is very important. And I can only say that I am very happy to have been a part of it. I left, when I was doing, it had morphed into Afrocentric reality. I left to go to work at Langston University in Oklahoma. Eventually from Langston, I left and went to Temple University in Philadelphia, got a PhD in African American Studies. And as life kind of went its way back to you, I was in Philly, I was in Oklahoma, I taught in Denver, a couple of other places, and one day I looked up and I was back in Houston. Before I left, I want to say that I was able to, through the permission of KPFT, turn over the time slot of Afrocentric reality to Reverend Judon Boney, who's actually in the audience today. So we were able to keep that voice going. And I just want to say, I don't know, I guess if Ted wants me to speak about how important the past is, and I'm not a person which to some degree has changed. The past is past without a doubt. is extremely important because it is what the present and the future is built on. I think that we need to make some changes in some of the philosophical foundations of the past, because if we are going to continue, if we are going to have everyone who's participating in this large human plurilogue begin to get something out of it, if we're going to make inroads against poverty and racism and sexism and all the isms that seem to plague us, we need to change some of the philosophical foundations of that past. And one of the things that programmers at KPFT have almost uniformly attempted to do is reach and impact the philosophy that is involved in the iconic man's inhumanity to man statement. So I'm certainly happy to have been involved in that. I'm happy to have made the relationships that I have made through my involvement in KPFT. Being involved in KPFT opens you up to a very large, diverse population that you can interact with. Being involved in KPFT lets you understand multiple points of view and lets you understand how important it is that everybody has dignity, that everybody is treated with respect, and lets you understand that for some of the contentiousness which humankind continually finds itself involved in, why it's necessary for us to be able to walk a mile in the other man's moccasins. So I'm not going to talk too long. I want to do what Ted asked me to do, and I hope that I have done this. I also want to make an announcement. On Friday, June the 10th, there is a special hour of programming that runs from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. where we will introduce to KPFT's audience and the large, Houston audience, all of the confirmed candidates for the county commissioners precinct race for County Commission Precinct 1 to take the late L. Franco Lee's place. This is a weird situation because it's not an election. Because of how things have been set up, you have a situation where 125 people are going to make a decision for 1 million people about who's going to serve in this office. I have real issues with that, but bureaucracy and corrupt systems come up with corrupt ways to make decisions. But one of the things about this is that even though it's a little unusual, it's ripe for perhaps an upset to take place because this is unprecedented. And money does not necessarily mean that you win this thing. This is retail politics on steroids. Rather than having to convince tens of thousands of people, you have to convince about 50, which is amazing. This is an amazing situation. But I just want to say to you that 2 of the candidates for that position are in this room today. There are Mrs. Georgia Provost and Reverend Dwayne Lord. There are a lot of political games, but of course politics is a game. We have only invited the confirmed candidates to participate on this program because, there is a, resign to run law that several people are not abiding by. So therefore, we did not invite anyone who was an unconfirmed candidate to participate in this forum. But I wanted to, by all means, please ask you, and the confirmed candidates are Provost Lark, Rodney Ellis, Gene Locke, a gentleman named Tazino, I can't remember his first name, and a gentleman named Ralph West. Nathaniel West. We have Rodney consented verbally to come on. Lark and Provost have already confirmed that they will be there. Jean Locke consented to verbally come on. I haven't had the opportunity to speak to Mr. West or Mr. Tizino, but they are in the process of receiving the invitation. But we want you to call in, to listen. We only have an hour. I believe in call-ins, but I'm not sure that we will be able to call in because we've extended 6 invitations to these people, and just them given the broader community, even though the broader community is not electing them and they are being selected, I do believe that the people they are supposed to serve should hear what their plans are for this. This is a huge, huge position. Has about $250 million budget. So, and it's almost, the person who's going to be in that office is almost being selected the way chairman of the boards are selected. And it's about almost the same kind of budget that's involved. But I just want to ask you to listen next Friday at 10 o'clock. So that's the past and the present. Thank you for this opportunity.
I am one lucky woman. I get to sit with 3 very handsome men, but also men who have done a lot in this community and who each at some point have inspired and impacted my work. I'm P.K. McCary. Some people know me as the peacemaker. And that's the truth. But peacemaking is not about creating the absence of conflict. In fact, I'm hoping that I get to share with you a little bit about how to fight, because a conflict is an obstacle in the way. It's a problem to be solved. It is usually something that's going to be impactful to someone in a positive way, or they benefit from it, and others in a negative way. The problem with conflict sometimes is that the outcome is based in part on something Obadike said. It's, how did he put it? Retail politics on steroids. He who has the gold wins, so to speak. And that was one of the things that, for me, KPFT stood for in my early 20s when it came into being. I thought, finally, a place where I can be included, a place that has a place for me. I realized that for all of the good reasons that KPFT started, KPFT has not done that. And it is not just about something that happened to me personally. I'm kind of like these 3 men. I look around and I see who's not here and why aren't they here, and whose voice is not being heard and why not. I had a show for 6 years, starting in 2003, called The Peace Hour, telling the stories of peace in action. And those stories of peace in action sometimes were hard conversations. I remember one of my shows that I really enjoyed was the UT professor who announced that he was an atheist early in his career. He was one of the ones that was really outspoken about the Iraq War. And he found a church that spoke to his need for social justice. And when he joined this church, he talked about an atheist being in a church. And the Presbyterian church got angry and told the church leadership that they had to get rid of him because he would infest other Christians. Now, as a Christian woman, grew up in the church. My father was a minister, my grandfather was a minister. My father was also a professor, and he always taught me to think. Culturally, I really am a Christian. When it comes to the philosophical differences I have in my Christianity, it's that I do not believe that God handpicks children and discards the rest. I'm not sure that I even believe in an in the cloud kind of spirituality, but a living, breathing spirituality. And what Bob Jensen learned from this was a couple of things. First of all, he writes about racism. He writes about being a white man that didn't have a lot of interactions with other races. And then he came to Texas, and that broadened his scope of other people in his life. But when it came time, I mean, they went to like court, Presbyterian court, to put him out of the church. And if they would not put him out of the church, they would put the church out of the, they were gonna get rid of somebody. Absolutely. And when Robert went to the meeting, they would not let him talk. He couldn't express himself at all. And that gave him a real understanding of what it's like not to be heard. He was privileged, he was white, he was educated, and they told him he couldn't talk. Needless to say, a lot of people talked for him because his church members, atheist or not or whatever, he was theirs. And they took up for him. And they were willing to be thrown out themselves rather than letting that one be thrown out. KPFT has an opportunity to evolve because too many people of too many ethnicities and diverse backgrounds have put their stamp on this radio station. And Ted sent me an article that talked about the beginning of KPFT. There's been a lot of fighting. But the biggest problem is we don't know how to fight. We don't know how to argue with somebody and still respect them and not denigrate them and not tear them down. And the different shows helps to give those who can't talk for themselves or aren't allowed to talk for themselves a chance to be heard. That's what KPFT is to me. I didn't get up every other Friday to do a show to pat me on the back. I've had my 15 minutes of fame. I prefer when I've been interviewed by Obadike than when I was interviewed by Larry King. Why? Because it was a flash in the pan. Probably a lot of people don't even remember it. But when I did that show on Bob Jensen and the Presbyterian Church, it was one of the most listened to of my shows, the one that I had the most responses to. And the reason I had the most responses to is because sitting in the pews or people who don't feel like they're included, but whatever it is that caused them to be there, they're trying to find acceptance. Whether or not it's doubting how you believe, or whether or not it's because of your sexual preference, or whether or not it's because you decide you don't want to have children, or whether or not you decide to get a divorce, name it, somebody is going to say, and I call them the identified patient. They're always going to pick somebody in the group that they can point to and say, well, you know, I'm not perfect, but they really are not perfect. And distract us so that we can focus on the identified patient rather than the identified problem. And the identified problem is we've got to work harder at this diversity than we do. I've been on major boards, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, United Religions Initiative. I have sat and been an officer, and I see the same problem over and over again. We always find people or issues that we can exclude. Even in URI, it's great. We want to end religiously motivated violence. We want to create nuclear disarmament, but don't talk about Black Lives Matter, and especially don't talk about the LGBT community, because we're not ready to deal with that. And they tell you, wait your turn. At KPFT, no one has to wait their turn, or they shouldn't have to. Look, the past, I thought that was kind of interesting. And I would love to thank one of my mentors that helped me through some difficult times at KPFT, and that was Esther King. He's gone now. But at Esther's funeral, he was a Palestinian, he was a gay man, he was an atheist, he was a Christian, he was all of those things because he included all those people. Everybody got to claim him. Everybody got to claim him because he claimed them. So if we're going to do this work, you got to claim everybody. And if you're not going to claim everybody, don't do this work. Get out of the way. We just had a survey done. What are the things that you're interested in is one of the questions. Every last one of them I'm interested in. I can't do them all. Somebody said, I can't be everything to everybody. Well, I'm not trying to. Here's the thing. I know what my gifts are. And so that's what I do. Good writer. I'm a marketing guru. I'm a graphic designer. I love telling stories in different ways. I'm a storyteller. So I'm not trying to be an anti-death penalty advocate other than as an ally, because it's not my work. But I tell you what, I help Ray, I help Pat, I help Gloria. I know who's in this work. I make it my business to know who's doing the work, and however I can use my gifts to help that, I will. So here's the thing, I'm not trying to be everything to everybody. I'm just PK, the peacemaker with an attitude, sometimes called the wacky peacemaker, because I swear to God, you've got to be crazy to want to do any of this work, because it's not identified patient, but identified patients. We all have issues. We all have problems. But everybody in this room is everything to me.